For the Southern California Prep Insider, I'm Keith Mulder here for another edition of the Best of the Rest podcast. We are here at UIC once again to break down all the best of the rest of the LA City section from 8-man to D3 to D2. We're bringing you all the action, some scoring updates, some previews, a big game happening this Friday, which we will get to in a little bit, and I'll be at that game, so make sure to check it out. Either way, though, let's get right into it. 8-man division. Couple of big games, a couple of teams differentiating themselves from the others, from the pack. But right now, Animo Robinson, unbelievable. They are continually just blowing out opponents left and right. Let's get you some scores from that 8-man division. San Jacinto Valley crushing Teach Tech Charter 42-0. Then New Designs University Park 50-22 over USC Hybrid. Lighthouse Christian 20-6 over East Valley, a close game there. And then Sherman Oaks CES 48, Sun Valley 20. Fulton with a 52-14 win over Discovery. And then looking at Animo Robinson, they won 32-0 over NVMI. So looking at that 8-man division. Animo Robinson right now, the number one team. 2 weeks left, folks. Can you believe that? 2 weeks left in this season. Wow, it's gone by like a blur. It seems like just yesterday we're doing the first edition of this podcast. Now I believe it's, week 8, week 9? Either way, crazy stuff. Looking forward to the playoffs for sure. We'll have all your coverage from the best of the rest from playoff time. Taking a look at the playoff rankings, though, Animo Jackie Robinson right now, 6-2 overall. They are 2-0 inside the 8-man division. Get this, folks. 380 points scored, just 164 allowed. So they know how to do it both on offense and on defense. Fulton, meanwhile, 4-3. They're the number 2 seed. 2-1 right now inside the city section, or rather inside that 8-man division. 190 points scored, 106 allowed. So they have the best defense inside 8-man, but Animo Robinson has the best offense by far. New Designs University Park, 4-3 on the year. They're 2-1 inside the division. And then Socias is 4-4 on the year. They're 2-0. So they're undefeated inside 8-man. They could easily be in that, in that runner-up position like they were last year with Animo Robinson. But right now, Fulton and New Designs University Park, they look good. University Park, they lost to Sun Valley at Sun Valley. It was a tough game, but they showed a lot defensively, I'll say. Even though they allowed a couple touchdowns late in that game, I liked what I saw from them. So 8-man, they certainly have a couple of teams that could challenge Animo Robinson, but right now it's all Monarchs at this point, really. And these next couple of games are going to prove that, how dominant Animo Robinson really is. Moving on, though, to a couple of these other divisions. Looking at D3, Manual Arts with a 20-6 win over Rivera. Then moving on, we have Monroe, 40-6 over Poly. Angelou, 17-0 over West Adams. Grant, 34-0 over North Hollywood. Marquez, 34-7 over Belmont. Chatsworth with a close win over Taft. Taft finally scoring some points. They had a touchdown in that game. 21-7 was the final. Wilson rebounding after their loss to Franklin, 42-22 over Torres. Jefferson smacking George Washington Prep, 48-14. Franklin with yet another convincing win, 35-6 over Marshall, the former D3 champ. Roosevelt blanking Southeast. No surprise there, really. 42-0. Southeast still has, if I'm not mistaken, still has yet to score a point this season. So we're hoping those Jags can kind of come up here in these next couple weeks and score a point at least. Arleta, meanwhile, 31-21 over Verdugo Hills. And then Legacy with a 26-14 win over Bell. So taking a look at some of these other divisions, looking at D3. Santee right now, the number 1 seed. They are 7-1 overall and 4-0 inside D3. 326 points scored, 87 allowed. So they have been unbelievable. Joseph Todd, a big reason for that. 1,711 yards this year, 25 touchdowns on the ground. He could easily go for over, I want to say, maybe 35 touchdowns and over 2,000 yards easily in these next couple of games. Santee, they look very good, and they look like the champion there in D3. Meanwhile, a couple teams on the fringe. Manual Arts, 6-3 overall, 4-1 inside D3. 275 points scored, 219 allowed. Their defense is kind of a weak spot for them, but they can surely run the football as well as throw it. Jalen McElroy, as I mentioned, fantastic. Isaiah Whitehead, very good too. Morse right now, or rather Monroe, shall I say, 5-3. They are 2-2 inside the division. Balanced offense and defense. Nothing really too exciting from Monroe. Mendez, the number 4 seed behind them. They are 4-3 on the year. 1-1 inside the D3 bracket. 169 points for, 153 allowed. So some of these teams, numbers may tell some stories, but numbers also, they can lie from time to time. If you have a blowout loss, it makes your points allowed look bad, when in the rest of the games you've been very good defensively. That's kind of happened to a couple of these teams. In their non-conference games, they've looked bad. Meanwhile, inside the conference, inside the division, they look good. So we'll see what happens with a couple of those teams. Moving on to D2, Franklin, currently the #1 team, and interestingly enough, they could have a chance to be inside. I mean, I'm not exactly sure. Playoff seems be as they may. I think they have a chance if they win their next game, which we'll get to in a moment. They could be in the open division. Who knows? It's. I think they deserve to be there. I don't think they will be there. But right now, they're going to likely be the #1 seed in D2 or maybe D1. Franklin right now 8-0 on the year. They have 3-0 inside D2 play. 338 points for, 139 allowed. They're actually the #2 offense as of right now inside D2. The #2 ranked Wilson Mules are the #1 offense, 339 points. So just by 1 point, folks. Wilson right now 6-2, a couple losses here or there, and that loss coming to Franklin actually. 154 points allowed, so they can do it on both sides of the ball. Roosevelt 6-3 on the year. The Rough Riders, we know they're high-powered rushing offense. They can do it week in and week out. That'll be huge for the playoffs. Will they be too one-dimensional? That's the question. But key for any opposing defense to stack the box against them. 285 points for them. As I mentioned, 3-2 inside D2. Arleta, meanwhile, 6-3. They're 4-1 on the year. 265 points for, but 251 allowed. So their defense has been a little shaky at times. Looking at this D2, look at these other divisions. There's a clear, shall I say, #1. Animal Robinson, the 8-man. Santee in D3. In D2, it's clearly Franklin, but behind them, it's really anybody's game. Wilson, Roosevelt, Arleta, all 6-win teams. So it's going to be tough. A couple of these teams playing each other this week, and the week after that. 2 weeks left. It's still hard to comprehend, really. Playoffs coming so soon, but I'm excited. All of us here at the Southern California Prep Insider, we're all excited, so we'll see that. Some games to watch this week. Sherman Oaks CES taking on Fulton, a big game there. Fulton had a huge 50-point performance last week. Monroe taking on Grant in a battle for the Valley. Lincoln taking on Wilson, and the thing about Lincoln is they played Eagle Rock pretty close, actually, and so don't count out Lincoln. They're a team that can sneak up on some people. Watch out for them in that D2 division. Locke taking on Crenshaw. Crenshaw, they've fallen on hard times this year, but inside their division, they've been, at least in their league, they've been good. But Locke, they have a good defense. Or defense, shall I say, a lockdown defense, if you will. Watch out for them. It's a battle of two city teams from different divisions, of course, but Crenshaw's D1, Locke's D2. And I'm expecting big things from Locke. If they pull out the win, better watch out for them. So moving on to the Game of the Week segment. This week we're breaking it all down. We're talking Franklin Eagle Rock, the battle of the unbeatens, the battle for Highland Park, Northeast LA. Everybody's going to be at this game. It's probably the biggest game of the year. We thought that Wilson Franklin was going to be the biggest game of the year, but no. It's Eagle Rock Franklin right now because of how well both teams are doing. Eagle Rock has been fantastic. 8-0 on the year. They've beaten, every single team in that Northern League. They've beaten literally every single opponent they've played. A couple of other, open division schools they've won as well. We'll get to them in just a second. But Franklin, the Panthers right now, they are 8-0 as well. Undefeated. They played a little bit inferior competition, but that's not to say this team is not talented, because they definitely are. And it all starts with their offense. Taking a look at their big wins on the year, 42-29 over Wilson. I was at that game, a huge performance from that running attack from Franklin. And then 42-25 over Lincoln, 49-33 over Roosevelt. And this year, Franklin, their defense has been somewhat good, not as strong as they would like, but their offense is really what's bringing them forward. You look at the scores from those games, 42, and 49 points scored. So they can score at will, basically. They love to run the hurry-up offense, as does Wilson more so. But they can do it all. And when you have an offense that powerful, it really gives you a lot of confidence. But looking at Bobadilla this year, Alfred Bobadilla, the best quarterback, in my opinion, in the city section right now. 140 for 207 through the air. 2,041 yards, 23 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. So he's a gunslinger, and he doesn't turn the ball over much. 215 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground as well, so he can do it on both sides of the ball. Taking a look, speaking of the running game, Angelo Vera, 383 yards, 7 touchdowns. Alex Gaspar, 362 yards and a touchdown. And then Chris Johnson, another supplementary guy, 305 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Escobars through the air are fantastic, a couple of those solid receivers. Daniel Phillips, though, is the main target for Alfred Bobadilla. 59 receptions, 854 yards, 9 touchdowns. Interestingly enough, in what seems to be a more balanced offense, we saw against Wilson, as I mentioned, more of a running attack. I think Alfred Bobadilla, there was some concerns about maybe an injury of some sort, maybe a shoulder, something like that. But the fact that they're known for throwing the ball, and yet they were able to run it on Wilson so effectively. Almost every single touch, really, from Angelo Vera was a touchdown, it seemed, or at least a big gain. It's really positive for a team to have both sides of the ball working, because you could have some of these teams that are so one-dimensional. The Roosevelts, where it's just literally just run. Carson, literally just running the football. To see a team do it on both sides, it really makes them a dangerous threat for sure. But looking at their defense, though, that's something that I want to mention. Hugo Escobedo, 13 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. Franklin, their offense is good. Their defense is also very good. The key will be, in this game against Eagle Rock, stopping the pass. It's going to be a slugfest. As I mentioned in that Wilson game, there's going to be no defense, and there wasn't any defense in that game. Both teams were scoring left and right in that first half. And then finally, Franklin kind of blew them away. But speaking of blowing teams away, Eagle Rock, that's all that they've done all year long. In 3 games against Torres, Marshall, and South Pass, they outscored their opponents 215-0. They've blown out teams left, right, and center. Look at this points margin on the year. 420 points scored, 60 allowed. Just 60 in 8 games. Not a math major, folks, but that's a little. It's a little. But yeah, taking a look, it's a point differential of 360. So the fact that they've scored this much and also defended as well, in my opinion, I think they're the top team in the section. Narbonne is very good, but the way that, I don't know, I just don't feel like this is the same Narbonne offense as we're used to. They can score points, yeah, their defense is high-flying, but something about this Eagle Rock team is special. Certainly special. It was after that first week against Southgate that I knew Andy Moran in his post-game speech, just what he said, there's something different about this team. Speaking of which, big wins for them over Lincoln, 28-6, which is a little discouraging, actually, because they've blown out teams in that Northern League. But for them to only win by 22 points, a little bit concerning. I'm sure they're going to get back on track, though, with their big quarterback, Nathan Corrales, who this year has been a dual threat if I've ever seen one. 1,462 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, just 2 picks. Fantastic play from him all season long. As well, on the ground, 486 yards and 6 touchdowns, so more of a dual threat than Bobadilla, but both can run very well. In terms of their other rushers, Turner, 493 yards, 7 touchdowns. Corrales, as I mentioned, 480 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then Zamora has been punching it in, 444 yards and 10 touchdowns. So watch out for that Eagle Rock rushing attack as much as their passing attack. A big guy, David Montijo, 593 yards and 7 touchdowns receiving, so he's their big target. Taking a look, though, at their defense. Their defensive line has been a strength all year long. Looking at that game against Southgate that I was at, their D-line was as stingy as they get. Nothing was getting through that D-line. Fantastic. Ryan Valdez as well on the secondary has been very good. 4 interceptions. Here's the interesting thing about Eagle Rock and David Montijo, by the way. 593 yards on just 28 catches. So that's about 25 yards a catch almost. The guy is a revelation. In this Eagle Rock-Franklin game, just speaking on that for a little bit, there's a lot of people that you talk about the open division. It's the best of the best, right? And Eagle Rock, they've shown, in my opinion, to be the better team this year than anybody else. Undefeated still, one of the lone undefeated teams in the city section. And I know that there's this whole thing about, D2 teams can't be in the open, and it's only D1 teams. But But right now, in my opinion, if Franklin wins this game over Eagle Rock, I think they have a legitimate case to be inside the Open Division playoffs. Maybe not number 1 seed, of course, but I think they definitely have a case to be number 8. Because if you beat a top 5 team in Eagle Rock and you're still undefeated, what else can you do? It's like UCF not being allowed to be in the national championship game. Although, it's the inferior competition thing. So it's tough to look at a team as talented as Franklin and say they're not an Open Division team just because they're in D2. Either way, maybe we'll see them come up in D1 a couple of these years, but right now they're special, and this is a huge game. The battle for North LA. Franklin and Eagle Rock, they've had a storied rivalry all year long. I believe it's the Principal's Trophy, if I'm not mistaken, that they exchange. But here's the thing, too. It is a home game for Franklin, and Franklin and Eagle Rock, they're basically across the street for each other. The battle for York Boulevard, basically. So we'll see who comes out with the win in that one. I expect a raucous crowd, and I'm honored that I'm going to be covering it because this is, in my opinion, the game of the year, really, the way that both these teams have played. Either way, I hope to see you guys out there. With that said, it's going to wrap it up here from USC for this edition of the Best of the Rest segment. I'm Keith DeMolder here for the Southern California Prep Insider. Make sure to check out all of our other content, those highlights. Make sure to get all that good stuff on YouTube and tweet at us if you disagree, if you think that Narbonne is actually the best team in the section. Tweet us why you think either Franklin or Eagle Rock's going to win. Either way, we're signing off here from USC. Take it easy, and make sure, get out there. Only 2 weeks left of football. It's coming to a close. Get to a game this week, and we'll see you next week. Take it easy.